background of our research paper. So as you can see, these are the authors of this research paper: Kemin He, Xiangyu Shang, Xiaoqin Ren, and Jian Sun. So these authors were a group of researchers from Microsoft, and this paper presented a series of improvements that allowed the authors to win a competition called ImageNet Challenge in 2015. So this was published in IEEE International Conference on Computer Vision, which was held in December 2015 in Santiago. So we can move on to the next slide. Um, so these are the major contributions of this paper: parametric rectifiers, initialization of filter weights for rectifiers, experiments that have been done on the data set called ImageNet. And this has given a major leap in accuracy, which has surprised many researchers in the field. They say that this research was helpful to destroy some of the assumptions they initially had about deep neural networks. So let's take a look at the overview of this research. So in this paper, they have investigated neural networks from two aspects, particularly driven by the rectifier properties. First, they have proposed a new extension for ReLU, rectifier linear unit function, which they called the parametric rectified linear unit, or PRELU. So they have also proposed an initialization that removes an obstacle of training extremely deep rectifier networks and allows to train ReLU activated deep networks in a stable manner. So before moving on to the next part, we can have a look at what is an activation function. So in the process of building a neural network, one of the choices that you get to make is what activation function to use in the hidden layer as well as the output layer of the network. Simply put, the activation function is a function that is added into an artificial neural network in order to help the network learn complex patterns in the data. So when comparing with a neuron-based model that is in our brains, the activation function is at the end deciding what is to be fired to the next neuron. So that is exactly what is an activation function does in ANN as well. So it takes the output signal from the previous cell and converts it into some form that can be taken as the input to the next cell. The activation function is a mathematical gate between the input feeding the current neuron and its output that is going to output going to the next layer. So it can be as simple as a step function that turns the neuron output on and off depending on a rule or a threshold. So it can also be a transformation that maps the input signals into output signals that are needed for the neural network to function. When your neural network needs to compute interesting functions, you need to pick nonlinear activation function. So an activation function is usually nonlinear. So why can't it be linear? And why does a neural network need a nonlinear activation function? Let's take a look at the next slide. So activation functions cannot be linear because neural networks with a linear activation function are effective only one layer deep, regardless of how complex their architecture is. So let's take a look at this example. So here, as you can see, this is a we have a hidden layer here, and let's consider the weights and biases of the first layer. So it said one, as mentioned in this equation, here is the output of layer one, which is the hidden layer, and W1 is the weight matrix assigned to neurons of the hidden layer that are W1, W2, W3, and W4. So X is the input features that are I1 and I2. So we can say it as bias assigned to neurons in the hidden layer, which are B1 and B2. So A1 here, as mentioned in the equation, A1 becomes a form of any linear function. So we can do the same thing to the next layer, which is the output layer. And by substituting the values we get, Z2 is equal to an initial input multiplied by the product of weights added to a bias. So this observation results again in a linear function even after applying a hidden layer. So we can conclude that no matter how many layers your neural network has, all layers will behave the same way because the composition of two linear functions is also a linear function itself. So neurons cannot learn with just a linear function attached to it. So unless you throw a nonlinear thing there, you're not computing more interesting functions even as you go deeper in the network. Hence, we need a nonlinear activation function. So there are many activation functions that are being used. So here are a couple of examples. So the first one is the sigmoid function, which is plotted as in S-shaped, as shown in the figure. So you can see the equation here. This is a nonlinear function in nature, and you can notice that x value notice that the x value that lies between -2 to +2, here the y values are very steep. So this means small changes of x would also bring about large changes in the value of y. So this value of this function ranges from 0 to 1. Then we have the tangent hyperbolic function, and this activation is said to work almost better always than the sigmoid function. It's actually a mathematically shifted version of the sigmoid function. Both are similar and can be derived from each other. So the value range is from -1 to +1, and it's also linear. And next we have the ReLU function, which is one of the focus point here. So it stands for rectified linear unit, as mentioned earlier. So it is the most widely used activation function. And here what happens is it gives output x if x is positive and 0 otherwise. So value ranges from 0 to infinity. ReLU is less computationally expensive than the previously mentioned two functions because it involves simpler mathematical operations. At a time, only a few neurons are activated, making the network sparse, making it efficient, and it makes it easy to computation. So, in simple words, ReLU learns much faster than sigmoid and tanh function. So, next we have a comparison between some versions of ReLU function. So there's one downside for this function. The downside for being 0 for all negative values. This problem is called dying ReLU. So a ReLU neuron is dead if it's stuck in the negative sites and always outputs 0, because the slope of the ReLU in the negative range is also 0, and once a neuron gets negative, it's unlikely for it to recover. Such neurons are not playing any role in discriminating the input and is essentially useless. So over the time, you may end up with a large part of your network doing nothing. So as long as all of them are not negative, we can still get a slope out of ReLU. They say that dying problem is likely to occur when learning rate is too high or there is a large negative bias. So there have been some alternatives for this problem. So you see here in the slide a generic form of rectifier linear function. So here the xi is the input of nonlinear activation f on the ith channel, and AI is in a coefficient controlling the slope of the negative part. So in this subscript I in the AI indicates that we allow nonlinear activation to vary on different channels. So when AI is equals to 0, it becomes a ReLU. When AI is a learnable parameter, as I mentioned here, it becomes a parametric ReLU function. So there's also another function called leaky ReLU. It has a small slope for negative values instead of altogether 0. For example, leaky ReLU may have 0.01x when x is lower than 0. So parametric ReLU is a type of leaky ReLU that instead of having a predetermined slope like 0.01, it has a parameter for the neural network to figure it out itself. So y equals ax when x is lesser than 0. So we have in the next slide, we have a graphical comparison between the ReLU function and the improved version, the PReLU function. So the parametric rectified linear unit or PRELU is a variant of the ReLU activation function where the coefficient of the negative part is not zero by default but can be learned. So they have shown that in this research by replacing the parameter-free ReLU by a learned activation unit improves the classification accuracy. So the improvement of PRELU over ReLU has been observed in various models, and here in this research they have used comparisons on a deep but efficient model with 14 weight layers. So the authors argue that the improvement with regards to value improves the accuracy at a negligible computational cost. The number of extra parameters that will be added in PRELU is negligible when compared to the total number of weights. So moving on to the next slide, uh, we can summarize up what we discussed about PRELU. So this is a replacement for rectifier linear unit ReLU. And they have shown that this, as mentioned earlier, replacing parameter ReLU by a learned activation unit improves the classification accuracy. So there are several significant points with this PRELU function. So it enables to train extremely deep rectified models directly from the scratch. So you group 15 will go deep into very deep neural networks on the paper 4 discussion. And also another point is that it has a negligible additional computational cost and overfitting risk. This will also be discussed in detail by group 9 in paper 9 discussion. And also, there has been a 26% relative improvement over the 2015, so 2014 winner. Whereas this research won the 2015 competition, it has had a 26% improvement than the 2014 winners. So this is said to be the first report to surpass the reported human level performance on on this ImageNet dataset. So to continue with the presentation, I invite Hasini.
Now I was talking about this word optimization. So we generally use this term optimize to emphasize that the idea that to make perfect. That means in other simple terms that we can say that it is a process of choosing the inputs which gives the best possible outputs. For example, I have here the minimal cost, maximal profit, and also minimal error. So you can say here uh, that the optimization goes with the idea that it tries to minimize or maximize the function. So now let's move on to the next slide. Uh, so now let's see what this optimization in neural networks means. Normally, in a neural networks, we use this non-convex optimization. Uh, uh, in non-convex optimization, the function includes multiple optima, and only one of them is the global optima. And optimizers are algorithms for changing attributes of neural networks, and we have some examples here, like gradient descent, a stochastic gradient descent, and also a stochastic gradient descent with momentum. We'll talk about some of this in the next few slides. So now let's see the optimization method used in this research. So here the parametric rectifier unit is can be trained using backpropagation and do the optimization with the layers with other layers simultaneously. So now let's see a little bit about what this backpropagation means. We can say that it is the process of adjusting neural networks weights for obtaining better prediction accuracy. For this, we use training data which already has known results. As I mentioned earlier, we train the PRELU for this. So here we have this equation for gradient of AI for one layer. So you can see, so here AI means the coefficient, AI is the coefficient which controls the slope of the activation function FYI. So here we have the objective function in this equation. So objective function is also referred to as normally a cost function or loss function, and it is the function to be maximized. It is generally the function to be maximized or minimized in a particular problem. So that is about this the gradient of AI in the equation that we use for gradient for AI. And now let's move on to the next slide. So now let's see what is this momentum that we no, very commonly used in these neural networks. So in generally, as we have learned in some previous courses and also in LOS, general idea of the momentum that pops into our mind is that it can be obtained from mass and velocity. So this kind of inertia causes an object to move in the direction it's already moving. So this idea can be used in neural networks also. In the very right side of this slide, you can see two figures. So here you can see that momentum increases the size of the steps taken towards the minimum by trying to jump from a local minimum. In the you can see in the right side of figure in the right side. I mean the figure titled as the SGD with momentum. Um, so by that we can obtain a faster path. So that is the advantage of using SGD with momentum. And also here is the animation that I have we have put in the slide to demonstrate the momentum. So I think it is you can see how the momentum effects to get the minimum. Uh, so now let's move on to the next slide. So here in this slide we see how that in this research they have adapted the momentum method when updating AI. So AI I have discussed in the previous slides. So here we have this equation. Here we have two variables, momentum and learning rate. Momentum that I have discussed in the previous slide. So the learning rate, we can say it is kind of a hyperparameter with a small positive value in the range of 0 to 1. um, so that is about this equation. So here no weight decay is used. That is because here a regularization method called I2 regularization is used to avoid pushing preloop towards ReLU. Um, and also here the momentum method is used to get a better, you can say better or faster convergence. And so now in this slide you can see the gradient of AI for the channel shared variant. Here in this slide, these terms I have discussed in the earlier slides also. The delta sig over delta FYI and also delta FYI over delta A. Those that is the uh, gradient of activation function, and the first one is the gradient of the so that is about this equation. So I think uh, you can everyone can understand the equation easily. So now let's move on with the presentation. I think Vidya will continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Hasini. This table shows the values recorded for a small but deep 14-layer model. The filters are indicated on the left column of the table. The learned coefficient of parametric rectified linear units are shown for both channel shared and channel shared. Using these values, we can compare both cases. There are two interesting phenomena in this table. First, the first convolution layer significantly greater than 0. The learned results show that both positive and negative responses of the filters are observed. are is more economically way to exploiting low-level information given the limited number of filters. Second, and the deeper convolution layer is general have a smaller coefficient. This implies that the activation gradually linear at increasing depth. In the other words, the learned model tends to keep more information in earlier stages. Then next table, in the next slide, it shows the comparison between rectified linear units and parametric rectified linear units on small models. The error rates for ImageNet 2012 using 10 view test, the images are resized so that the shortest side is 256 during both training and testing. Each view is 224. All models are trained using 75 epochs. As a baseline, they trained this model with ReLU applied in the convolutional layers has two fully connected layers. The top 1 and top 5 errors are 33% and 13%. Then they trained the same architecture with Prelude. Top 1 error is reduced to 32%. This is 1.2% gain over Prelude's baseline. You can see the channel-wise Prelude gives top 1 and top 1 error than others. Then let's move to the next initialization of filter weight for rectifiers. In this paper, they proposed the robust initialization method that removes the obstacles of training extremely deep rectifier networks. The meaning of robust is strong. So they proposed a strong initialization method than other related methods. Glorat Bedio in their paper proposed to adopt a properly scaled uniform distribution for initialization. It is called Xavier initialization. They considered that activations are linear, so it is invalid for ReLU and Preludes. In this paper, their initialization allow for extremely deep model to converge while Xavier method cannot. Then let's move forward and backward propagation cases in the initialization. In forward propagation case, the central idea is to investigate of the response in each layer. For convolutional layer, the response is given like this left upper equation in here. In the equation, x is k by k squared c by 1 vector, k by k pixel in C input channels. W is D by N matrix, D number of filters and each row is filter weight. B is vector of biases. L is layers number or index. Y is a pixel of output map. For backward propagation, the gradient of a convolution layer is computed by using this right upper equation. Here they use delta x and delta y to denote gradient for simplicity. Delta y represent k by k channels. Then after derivation, they found these two bottom equations for the variance of the product of independent. Here, YL and WL are random variables from initial equations. Then let's move to the comparison with Xavier initialization. Left graph shows the convergence of 22 layer model and the right graph shows the convergence of 30 layer model. The x-axis training epochs and the y-axis is the top 1 value error. In these two graphs, you can see top one error is more reduced easy initialization than severe initialization. Then let's move to the architectural implementation. This table shows there are others of large models. Their baseline is the 19 layer model. They also listed VGG19 model for comparison. Here they use filter size of 7 by 7 and stride of 2. Then they moved the other tree convolution layer on the two largest feature maps to the smaller feature maps. The time complexity is roughly unchanged because the deeper layers have more filters. Then they use spatial pyramid pooling before the first fully connected layer. Their model is better architecture in, and also model A has faster running speed. Their model B is the deeper version of A. It has 3 extra convolutional layers. Their model C is uh, wider version of B with more filters. Then
Thank you, Vidya. Let's talk about what is ImageNet. ImageNet is a database with hundreds and thousands of images, and here images are organized in a hierarchical manner. And this ImageNet is useful for computer vision applications. Here, in this experiment, they did the experiment on the 1000 class ImageNet 2012 dataset. It contains about 1.2 million training images, 50,000 validation images, and 1 lakh test images. The paper 11 presentation will go deep into ImageNet and ILS VRC details. Then let's move on to accuracy with top-end approach. Uh, Here, when you have a lot of different classes, the standard accuracy metrics will be misleading. So, top-end accuracies will be help to overcome this issue. Let's look at what is top-1 accuracy. Top-1 accuracy is the conventional accuracy. That means when the model answer must be exactly the expected answer. The top 5 accuracy means if any of our model which gives 5 highest probability answers that must match to the expected answer. So then top 5 error is the percentage of the time that the classifier didn't include the correct class among its top 5. Then let's move on to some example. Let's say you are applying a machine learning algorithm for object recognition. So, as you suppose you are given a picture of cat, and they have obtained the predicted values, and highest prediction value was comes with the tiger image. So, it suppose it is larger than the value given for a cat image. So if you are using top 1 accuracy, you will count this output as wrong because it predicted as a tiger. But if you are using top 5 accuracy, you count this output as correct because the cat can be among the top 5 guesses. So that is the reason for why top 5 becomes meaningful. let's move on to a comparison between the Prelude and Prelude ones. As you can see, this table shows the comparison between those two on the large model A in ImageNet 2012. We use the they use the channel-wise version of Prelude. Here, both Prelude and Prelude models are trained using the same total number of epochs. So, and the learning rates also switch after running the same number of epochs. This shows the results at 3 scales and the multi-scale combination. As you can see, the base single scale is 384, possibly because it is in the middle of the jittering range. Jittering range means between the 256 and 512. So this consistently show that Prelude improves both small and large models. This improvement is obtained with almost no computational cost. For the multi-scale combination, Prelude reduces the top 1 error by 1.05% and the top 5 error by 0.23% compared with Prelude. Then let's move to the next slide. As you can see, the first table, it shows the comparisons of single model results. They all obtain using multi-scale and multi-view test. For their models, the combination weights for all scales are equal. The baseline model, which is A with value, is represents 6.51 percentage, is already substantially better than the single model result of 7.1 reported for VGG 19 in the latest update. They believe that this gain is mainly due to their end-to-end training without the need of pre-training shallow models. The base single model has 5.71 percentage of top 5 error. It was the C with Prelude model. This result is even better than the previous multimodal results in other table. The 19-layer model and the 22-layer model perform comparably when you comparing A with Prelude with B with Prelude. On the other hand, when increasing the width, it also can improve the accuracy, as you can see when comparing both C versus B. This implies that when the models are deep enough, the width becomes an essential factor for accuracy. Then let's move on to the next table. As you can see, the second table shows the multimodal results. Multimodal is a combination of 6 models, including those in previous table. For the time being, they have trained only one model with architecture C. The other models have accuracy inferior to C by considerable margins. So their result in the result of this study is 4.94% top 5 error on the test set. So their result is 1.7% better than the ILSVRC 2014 winners one, which represent a 26% relative improvement. So this is also a 17% relative improvement over the latest result, which was done by Baidu. Then let's move to the comparison with the human performance. Roseskowski et al. Recently reported that human performance yields a 5.1% top 5 error on the ImageNet dataset. The algorithm of this study gives a superior result, about 4.94% on this particular dataset. But this does not indicate that machine version outperforms human vision on object recognition in general. For example, as you can see in this slide, the second one, the human can easily identify this as a flower. But it is non-trivial for most humans to tell this is a yellow lady slipper, while their method recognizes that. So their algorithm also still makes mistakes in some cases, which are not difficult for humans, especially for those requiring context understanding or high level knowledge. This number is achieved by a human annotator who is well trained on the validation images to be better aware of the existence of relevant classes. The reported human performance is estimated on a random subset of uh, 1500 test images. Let's move on to a summary of our their work. Mm, As you can see here, in this research, they investigated neural networks driven by the rectifiers. Initially, they proposed a prelude which adaptively learns the parameters, and then they derived a theoretical sound initialization method. And also, they performed this on ImageNet 2012 dataset, and they achieved 4.94% top 5 error, and this is a 26% relative improvement over 2014's winners Google network. This surpasses for the first time human level performance of 5%. One thing. So in the next slide, you can see some references we have used to build this presentation. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you, and you feel free to ask questions.